News with Michael Thompson.
Good evening, welcome to Nine's Late News. As we go to where tropical cyclone Kimi is churning off the coast of North Queensland. The Category 2 system is changing course hour to hour, barrelling towards towns before U-turning and heading in a different direction. Residents along a 350-kilometre stretch of coastline from Innisfail to Ayr are on alert. The message tonight for people in the danger zone is to please stay inside. Let's go first to reporter Alex Heinke in Cardwell, just north of Townsville. Alex, this storm's path has been so unpredictable. What's the latest?
Well, the latest is that it continues to be absolutely unpredictable, Michael. This thing has turned on a dime and changed directions about a dozen times throughout the course of the day. But the latest news and the good news that we can bring you from the Bureau of Meteorology will mean people that are bunkering down, residents and businesses which are bracing themselves, will be able to breathe a sigh of relief because this thing is moving further away from the east coast of northern Queensland. We can show you a map which depicts exactly what this next projection by the bomb is, and it shows that it will, as you mentioned, be doing a U-turn. Can you believe it? That just came from nowhere, only in the next few hours, and then potentially being downgraded to a Category 1 system. It still, though, Michael, will bring a lot of rain to the region, and we know these things can re-intensify after they are downgraded. So, Michael, certainly not out of the woods with this one just yet.
Absolutely. Alex, thank you. Let's go next to reporter Maya Fellows at Townsville Airport. Maya, Cyclone Kimi is having a knock-on effect for flights from tonight.
That's right, Michael. Townsville Airport is now officially closed. At least 4 flights scheduled for tomorrow morning have been cancelled. The Townsville Airport will reassess the situation tomorrow morning and decide whether the airport will remain closed or if they'll reopen it. It'll just depend on whether Tropical Cyclone Kimi brings damaging conditions to the region tonight. Flights aren't the only thing that have been affected by this weather system in Townsville. We have a by-election here this weekend. Today, early voting was closed and the ECQ is yet to decide whether pre-polling will be closed tomorrow too, Michael.
Maya, thank you for the update. Novak Djokovic, who's reported lockdown complaints, have fallen on deaf ears right across the board. The Prime Minister, SA and Victorian Premiers tonight returning serve and dismissing his demands to ease restrictions as he quarantines in Adelaide, while in Melbourne 72 players and dozens of staff are now in hard lockdown. And with 6 new infections linked to Australian Open charter flights, Daniel Andrews won't be allowing any special treatment. Reporter Stephanie Anderson is in Melbourne tonight. Steph, what was one of the world #1's wish list?
Well, Michael, some pretty specific and it seems ambitious requests. Everything from access to more fitness equipment and better food to being able to have contact with trainers and coaches. Some players being allowed to leave hard lockdown sooner as a result of producing more negative test results, and some players being moved into private homes with tennis courts. Now, as you say, Novak Djokovic is currently quarantining in Adelaide and has met the threshold that allows him to leave that hotel room to fulfil that set amount of time on the court for training each and every day. They are much more favourable conditions than what a lot of players quarantining here in Melbourne are currently living in. Many have been deemed close contacts of confirmed cases and are therefore in hard lockdown. Now, they do say if you don't ask, you won't receive, but Daniel Andrews has had no hesitation to say no to Novak Djokovic. Michael.
Steph, thank you. A long-awaited homecoming tonight for Victorians who have been stuck in New South Wales, finally heading back to the state as it reopens to most of Greater Sydney. 25 local government areas have been taken off the red zone list. Travellers will still need a permit before they can enter and will have to isolate upon arrival until they test negative to COVID. Wollongong and the Blue Mountains have also been downgraded to orange zones.
I was driving from Coolangatta to Canberra to avoid Sydney, which was a red zone, and then the announcement came out I could take a left turn, park in Sydney, get on the plane in Sydney and come straight to Melbourne, so I did that.
New Year's Eve was just a ball of anxiety for us because that was when we found out that, we might not be able to come home, and even having the interview with DHHS and someone asking, so why are you coming to Victoria? I'm like, but we live here, this is our home.
10 local government areas in Sydney's south and southwest remain in the red zone. Entry to Victoria is still banned for the areas you can see on your screen at the moment. South Australia, on the other hand, is standing firm, refusing to allow Sydney-siders into the state. Let's go to Keziah Sullivan, who's in Adelaide for us tonight. And Keziah, Premier Stephen Marshall is reluctant to move too soon.
Yes, he is, Michael, and the concern centres around 6 new locally acquired COVID cases which were found in New South Wales yesterday. It's unclear if those cases will restart the 14 days of no community transmission, which authorities were looking at as a benchmark to relax restrictions here in South Australia. What we do know, though, is that SA's Transition Committee will be meeting tomorrow. The situation with arrivals from Sydney is set to be a hot topic between authorities. The Premier says he doesn't want to do anything which will jeopardise our state. Michael, this all comes as South Australia records another day of no new coronavirus cases.
Keziah, thank you for the update. No jab, no entry could become a new COVID rule as the New South Wales Premier hints at venue or service bans for people who refuse to be vaccinated. Alice Montfries is across the details. And Alice, how would this work?
Well, Michael, it is very much still an idea at this stage, but one that the Premier says the community needs to begin discussing, with a possible vaccine rollout maybe beginning as early as next month. Now, in terms of how it would work, much in the way that airlines have already flagged banning passengers who haven't had the jab from travelling overseas, high-risk venues such as pubs and clubs could also prevent anti-vaxxers from entering their venues. Now, this would be something that would have to be enforced on an individual basis by those venues as a condition of entry. And this is not the only thing that the government has to discuss at the moment. They'll be meeting on Wednesday for Community Crisis Cabinet, where they'll be discussing a number of measures such as the wearing of masks, the cap that exists at the moment on wedding numbers, as well as the number of people who are allowed to visit your home. But Michael, the Premier has already flagged that the outcome of those decisions may in fact be impacted by the very low recent testing numbers.
Alice, thank you. The Prime Minister has met virtually with other world leaders tonight to discuss the rollout of COVID-19 vaccines overseas. Political reporter Fiona Willam with the details.
Michael, this was a chance for the Prime Minister to learn more about how other countries are going with their vaccine programs. Austria, Israel, Greece, Denmark, the Czech Republic and Norway were planning to attend this meeting. And of particular interest tonight was Norway's experience with the Pfizer jab. We know around 30 elderly people died there after receiving it. It's not yet known if the deaths were linked to the vaccine. But Australia is seeking more information because the government hopes to introduce Pfizer here next month. Economists say a successful vaccine rollout this year will be important to our economic recovery. COVID-19 cooked the economy, but in Australia, its bite has been less bitter than expected.
Fantastic.
A new report by Deloitte says Australia is one of just 5 nations, along with Taiwan, China, Vietnam and Japan, to enter 2021 in a strong position, predicting our economy will grow by 4.4% this calendar year.
So things are worse today than they were before COVID, most notably unemployment. But they're a lot better than we thought they would be.
While jobs are down by around 140,000 on pre-COVID levels, it's expected more than 250,000 Australians will return to work this year.
Jobs are coming back and the economy is picking up as restrictions are eased.
After peaking at 7.5% in July and falling below 7% in November, unemployment is expected to continue gradually heading south. But it's unlikely to return to pre-COVID levels until 2023. Underemployment remains a problem and it's unlikely those with a job will get a pay rise.
One of the lingering victims of COVID will be wage growth in Australia.
This is not a good enough recovery if it leaves people stranded in joblessness or underemployment or on weak wages.
The outlook is based on the assumption that a COVID-19 vaccine will soon be available here as planned and that international borders will gradually reopen this year. The government is seeking more information on the Pfizer jab after around 30 recipients died in Norway.
They're very aged people and they were in the last phases of life.
But the Health Department boss says he's not unduly concerned about the vaccine safety. As for reopening international borders this year...
It's a big open question. I think the answer is probably no.
Fiona Willan, 9 News.
Arsonists are on the run in Perth tonight. Police hot on their tails after a spate of deliberately lit fires across the city. Residents were forced to defend their homes as flames crept dangerously close. And tonight, authorities have issued a stern warning to those behind the attacks. Reporter Kelly Haywood is in Perth tonight. Kelly, are police any closer to finding the firebugs?
Well, Michael, they're doing everything they can to find those responsible. WA Police have even developed a specific task force to find the people behind these blazes, and they've called them Strike Force Vulcan. On their radar, several children that could be behind some of the 56 suspicious bushfires that have already been lit this bushfire season. Now, 29 people have already been charged, and they could face life in prison if they're convicted. So our authorities are hoping that is enough of a deterrent for any future would-be firebugs. Michael?
Kelly, thank you. To breaking news overseas now, and Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny is facing court tonight following his arrest upon returning to Moscow. Let's go straight to Europe correspondent Carrie-Anne Greenbank, who's following the case from London. Carrie, take us through what's happened in court.
Well, Michael, it's more of an improvised court hearing than anything else that's happening on the outskirts of Moscow as we speak. Alexei Navalny has released a video from inside the court proceedings before the court hearing began. He said he was confused about why it was happening in a police station. He said that minutes earlier he'd been taken out of his cell and put in touch with his lawyers for a meeting, and then he found himself in front of the judge for this court hearing. His supporters have said that they've been locked out of the proceedings, and also that journalists have been locked out as well. But it's all unfolded after Alexei Navalny returned from Germany to Russia last night. He arrived at an airport in Moscow and was swiftly taken into custody. He spent the past 5 months recovering after being poisoned and almost killed by the nerve agent Novichok. That's something he accuses the Putin government of doing, and that's something the government has been denying. But Russian authorities have said that he breached his parole for a previous suspended sentence. That's why he's in custody. That's why he's facing this court hearing. But regardless of all of that, Michael, this is something that world governments condemn. The UK, US and EU governments have all put out statements calling for Alexei Navalny's release immediately.
Not surprising too. Kari, thank you. The FBI is going into overdrive ahead of Thursday's inauguration of Joe Biden as America's 46th president. It's screening US troops involved in the ceremony after it was found a number of the rioters who stormed the Capitol had connections with the military.
Donald Trump's supporters surge into the Capitol and come face to face with police.
We're outnumbered. There's a million of us out there, and we are listening to Trump. You're the boss.
Before pushing past into the House's chambers, searching for the country's leaders.
Where the are they?
Then an eerie quiet. Rioters rifling through politicians' desks uninterrupted, taking photos of confidential Senate documents.
There's got to be something in here we can use against these scumbags.
Claiming they are backed by Republicans.
I think Cruz would want us to do this, so yeah, absolutely. I think we're good.
While also leaving their own notes.
It's only a matter of time. Justice is coming.
Any chance I could get you guys to leave the Senate wing?
We will. I've been making sure they ain't disrespecting the place.
Okay, just want to let you guys know this is like the sacredest place.
Thank you, Heavenly Father, for giving the inspiration needed to these police officers to allow us in this building. Thank you for filling this chamber with patriots that love you and that love Christ. In Christ's holy name we pray.
The scenes of lawlessness leading to the current rollout of National Guard across the country. Soldiers marching in to state capitals.
We go where we're called.
Prepared for armed protests, which today fizzled. Law enforcement outnumbering those hoping to make a point.
We are going to continue protesting it and continue fighting.
The centre of Washington, D.C. is in the process of being locked down for inauguration. Inside the restricted zone here on Pennsylvania Avenue, the flags are out and the welcome banners are up. But there's absolutely no one here to see it, and that's exactly what authorities want for Inauguration Day, as they reiterate their pleas for the public to stay away.
We definitely don't want to see armed troops on our streets, but we do have to take a different posture.
In Washington, D.C., Tim Arvia, 9 News.
You're watching Nine's late news telecast right across Australia. Next tonight, the 44th anniversary of the Granville train disaster and the reunion of a victim and the man who rescued him. And the death of the American remembered for music and murder.
The Billionaire Special Events are here. with a superstar Aussie lineup and our frontline heroes taking on the world's biggest game show.
The greatest quiz show on the planet is back with prime time special events.
Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? The special events starts next Monday on 9.
Emily's a mum running her business from home. Her partner was travelling into the city to work every day. Life was a bit rushed. Then COVID hit and their life changed. Her partner started working from home permanently. They were using their car less, so they switched to Yui and saved $530. Then they decided on a sea change, which reduced their premium even more. When your life changes, your insurance should too. Yui, you insured.
I'm Taylor Davies and I play in the AFL for the GWS Giants. Do you know what I find even tougher than footy? Getting rid of my fake tan. Australia's very own Amara Elegance have invented the world's first exfoliating tan removing wand, and it's an absolute game changer. No scent, no burn, no worries. Get tough on fake tan removal the gentle way.
At this time, 44 years ago, Australians were beginning to learn the extent of what was to become the nation's worst rail disaster. The bodies of 83 people would eventually be recovered from the wreckage of a crowded commuter train that ran off the rails at Granville, smashing into a road bridge that came crashing down on the carriages below.
On the anniversary of the Granville train disaster, a crowd gathered as they always do. Among them, two men who, until today, hadn't spoken since that fateful day.
And this is the first time they will actually talk to each other in 44 years.
Ken Peterson recently discovered this photograph of himself as a 26-year-old ambulance officer taken at Granville on January 18, 1977.
And I said, "Do you know who the bloke is on the stretcher?" He said, "I think I do." Yesterday he got back to me, said it was Bruce, and this is the first time we've ever met.
Bruce White was a young father on his way to work when the crowded city-bound train derailed, smashing into a bridge which crushed two carriages.
So I was under the bridge for 3 hours. Yeah, it was hot, dark, covered in soot. The photo that Ken discovered was when I was just first pulled out.
83 men, women and children were killed and 213 injured in the disaster. From his hospital bed, Bruce begged a nurse to get him a copy of the paper.
And much to my amazement, that photo was in the paper. And by reading that, I realised the extent of the accident.
Bruce and Ken's story is just one to come from that tragic day. 44 years on, those who can still return each year to remember and reflect.
Today, they stood side by side on the bridge, throwing roses onto the tracks below to honour those who didn't survive and uphold their vow to never forget.
Because it was just so hot under there. And there was so much soot. In fact, I've got a tattoo from the bridge where my hand was cut, and there's still soot from the bridge that the nurses couldn't get out of.
Kate Creedon, 9 News.
Next tonight, from famous music producer to convicted murderer, the rise and fall of Phil Spector, who's died aged 81.
Somehow we always seem to shake things off. We never seem to let the burdens weigh us down. Yeah, we're okay now. Together we made a stronger stuff.
Window fully pinataed, Keith. Some insurers don't fix it excess-free, which could affect next year's party budget.
That's not a pinata, Dad.
But luckily, Amy has an option that does, and that's what I call a pinata. Does your home insurer offer optional excess-free glass cover? Amy does.
When you need money for the unexpected, time can seem against you. Nimble makes finance faster. Get a Nimble small cash loan up to $5,000 within 60 minutes once confirmed. Visit nimble.com.au.
Real comfort on a plush sofa. Now with up to 50% off. Plus 48 months interest-free.
The BMW demonstrator event is now on. Receive up to $5,000 deposit contribution on selected BMW demonstrators. And make your dream somehow realistic. Visit your local dealer today.
Life is pretty convenient nowadays. Self-driving cars, the internet, and Aldi's whole split chicken. Pre-cut, pre-marinated, and now only $4.99 per kilo. Aldi, good, different.
Botox Bandit.
$1,700 worth of quality injectable treatments, and she didn't pay.
The hunt for the mystery client accused of doing a runner. A current affair tomorrow.
Phil Spector is being remembered tonight as both a musical pioneer and a cold-blooded killer. A brilliant record producer who had a deadly dark side. The 81-year-old dying in jail, another victim of coronavirus.
For a short time, his was the biggest name in music. But for a long time, he will be remembered for the spoken words of an unnamed juror.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Philip Spector, guilty of the crime of second-degree murder of Lana Clarkson.
Phil Spector helped make pop popular in the 60s, the musical mind behind more than 100 songs. Pioneering the layered audio effect known as the wall of sound. He produced for the Beatles. And Ike and Tina Turner. As his fame grew, so did his hair and an addiction to drugs, alcohol and guns, culminating in the 2003 murder of actress Lana Clarkson inside Spector's Hollywood home.
The police decided not to enter the house as human beings and to protect and serve, but rather as animals.
Spector denied involvement. The trial televised nationally.
Well, what happened, sir? Spector's response was simply this.
He was sentenced to 19 years in prison, an effective life sentence that ended this morning after he'd contracted COVID-19.
Will little Philip die? I may not believe in God, but I know there's a devil.
Charles Croucher, 9 News.
When we come back, tomorrow's weather details and our in-depth look at the share market.
Before the return of Australia's biggest social experiment, a grand reunion event like you've never seen before.
Hey! The bitch is back.
One by one, the most memorable brides and grooms
Hello, darling.
are back. With unfinished business. The Married at First Sight Grand Reunion event, Sunday, Jan 31.
Aldi's pre-marinated boneless lamb leg is so easy, it's impossible to mess it up. Butterflied lamb leg, now only $14.99 per kilo. Aldi, good, different.
Solar rebates reduced January 1, but if you're one of the many who missed out, Sunboost is now giving a final chance to lock in lowest prices with a limited rebate reboost.
If you missed last year's maximum solar rebate, don't miss the rebate reboost from Sunboost. For a limited time, you can still get this huge 6.6 kilowatt premium system at a special 2020 price, just $34.91. Last chance extension ends January 31 or while stocks last. Call 1300 Sunboost.
Duck Fresh Discs, now exploding with fragrance.
Well, it does smell quite nice. With new odour-neutralising technology, it fights stains and freshens flush after flush. Look, it's not rocket science, it's duck science.
SC Johnson.
Liz Hayes puts the biggest mysteries of our time.
I'm looking for the truth.
Under investigation. Coming soon to 9.
The share market has had its worst day for more than a week. The All Ords losing 51 points. With the details, business reporter Chris Kohler.
A disappointing start to the week for stocks. The All Ordinaries down 0.75% following falls on Wall Street. Miners were hard hit today after some weakness in commodity prices. BHP, which is the world's biggest miner, losing almost 3%. But elsewhere, JB Hi-Fi forecast a big profit increase for the first half, and that also seemed to help rival Harvey Norman. And the Australian dollar started the week on the back foot, buying 76.8 US cents, 63.6 euro cents, and 56.6 British pence.
Thanks, Chris. Let's go behind the numbers now with Scott Phillips from Motley Fool. Scott, good evening to you. First to the big miners. As Chris said, iron ore prices were weaker. Does that tell the whole story about the falls in the sector?
Tomo, good evening. Yeah, iron ore prices certainly after having a cracking last, 6 or 7 months, took a bit of a breather overnight our time, and of course that led to our market this morning. The other factor at play is a rising US dollar. Now, when the US dollar is rising, that means the Australian dollar is falling, and that pushes down the Australian dollar benefit for our miners. So a double whammy today, both the currency and the commodity prices falling.
All right, now on the flip side, good news for two companies whose sales have grown since COVID, JB Hi-Fi and Super Retail Group.
Yeah, amazing numbers. You think about these are the most recent quarter and most recent half. This is in the depths of the COVID recession. And we saw sales growth of 23 and 24% for Super Retail Group and for JB Hi-Fi. Chris mentioned Harvey Norman as well. There is very much a sense this is going to be a retail-led recovery. When I say going to, I guess, or it is probably a better way to put it. But certainly almost all retailers enjoying really, really good health right across the retail spectrum at the moment.
Now, Scott, China making headlines tonight, the only major world economy to grow last year.
And it's growing reasonably strongly too, Tomo. Now, for the year, the growth was about 2.3%. That's reasonably anemic for China. Of course, it used to grow at 6 or 7%. But like all numbers over the next couple of months, that is a full year number. The most recent quarter just completed, China's GDP was up 6.5%. That's effectively back to full pace after their fall earlier in the year. So really, really good numbers for China. And as we know, that portends for good things for the broader global economy as China remains the real growth engine of the world's economic GDP.
They are remarkable numbers. Now, we've got Wall Street closed tonight for Martin Luther King Day. So what's going to drive our market tomorrow?
Oh, if I was being cynical, I'd say we'd actually have to think for ourselves for a change, but I won't say that. Look, US news is going to be well and truly front and centre. We know with the inauguration coming up, as you've already mentioned, that's going to remain a big headline driver. And then, of course, local events on our market today as we wait for the US markets to open tomorrow their time, so take us ahead 36 hours or so. At the moment, though, the Australian futures are up meaningfully, up over 0.5%. So with a bit of luck, we might yet, despite US closure, have a good day on our markets tomorrow.
Fingers crossed. Scott Phillips, as always, thank you. Let's check tomorrow's weather now. And Brisbane showers, a possible storm, a top of 30 degrees. Sydney, a shower or two, windy 24. Canberra, mostly sunny 29. Melbourne, partly cloudy 19. Hobart, cloudy 17. Adelaide, mostly sunny 29. Perth, partly cloudy 34. Darwin, rain at times, a storm likely with a top of 31 degrees. That is Nine's late news for this Monday. Our next bulletin is at 5 a.m, followed by the Today Show with Carl and Ali. Thanks for your company. I'm Michael Thompson. Good night.